lot of support, went down to the hospital, and I know how much he appreciated it, and then in turn, how much we appreciated seeing him come out on the first day of practice this fall. And it was a big surprise also. We thought he was going to be down and out for the first 3 weeks to a month with surgery. And without telling us, all of a sudden he popped up and walked into practice with a big smile on his face. And that was big to us, and it showed, I think, in the first game especially, as we came out and we won our first game over Northview, and then went on and had a good season. So I think that we want to say thanks to Scotty for being our coach. There's a lot that we appreciate, all the time, the effort that you put forth for that. And we also want to thank you for all the other stuff that you do with us as far as Monday night and everything else. So we have a little something for you. You come up.
My name is Darcy Olson, and I am one of Scott's sisters. There are 4 of us. Like I said, I'm not the oldest and I'm not the youngest. So everything he did with a flair. I rarely heard him put someone down. He was always building people up, encouraging people. He made them feel like someone.
When we were kids, we did not get along very well. Like I said, you know, there's 5 years between us. He had been the baby of the family for a lot of years. And then I came along, and I was a chronic tattler. I admit it. I liked getting that guy in trouble because he always was doing something that I thought was not appropriate.
I'm Ryan Whitmore. Scotty was my soccer coach in '89 through '92 at Rockford. Originally, when he came to this area, he was a soccer coach at Rockford before he started teaching at Cedar Springs. Of all the people I've known throughout my life, Scotty was definitely one of the goofiest, but the most out there, and people that was genuine. You know, he cared.
I am Scott Hazel, the varsity soccer coach at Rockford. I just thought that I would let you all know that, especially for the benefit of those who, the last time you saw me, may still be looking for the bald guy with no eyebrows. It's pretty scary. In fact, the last time at a girls' banquet, when I stood up here in this situation, I looked like a shaved grape. So I feel pretty good. This is a great night.
His first battle was almost 23 years ago. He had testicular cancer that had spread. By the time he went in and got things checked out, it had really metastasized to a lot of locations. And I do remember getting that phone call that this is bad, this is bad. He was given at that time a 50-50 chance. Really, that's kind of a miracle story in itself that he was scheduled, they had found the cancer along his spinal column, and his doctors were scheduling this surgery, and it was going to be horrible. They were going in and they were going to remove the lymph nodes along his spine. He had a couple spots in his liver. They were going to take out part of his liver. Recovery was going to be horrible. And it was a day or two before he was scheduled to go have surgery. And this gentleman, he was a parent of one of Scott's soccer players, and he had been a doctor. And he called Scott and said, you know, this is none of my business, but I think you need to go to a place that specializes in this kind of cancer. And the best place to go is Indiana University. So he canceled his surgery here. And I mean, it was within days. It was coming up. Everybody was preparing to be in town and to be at the hospital with him. But he canceled that. My mother took him down to Indiana University. Like I said, Sue was pregnant at the time, pretty pregnant, probably 7 or 8 months along. And so they went down there and they looked at all of his test results and did more tests on him. And they came back to him and they said, you know, you're really not the patient we thought we were going to see. We believe that what you're seeing on the tests is scar tissue from the chemotherapy, because he had gone through a terrible few rounds of chemotherapy with that first bout of cancer. And then they sent him home and said, we think you're okay. We're going to monitor you, and you come back for a while every month. So he would go back every month for the first year and have tests run at the University of Indiana, and he ended up not having to have any of the surgeries. And then he was given, a couple years later, a clean bill of health. And during that time, I think part of the miracle was, and he would say this now, I mean, he did say this, that really, you know, Sue was pregnant at the time, and when he thought that that might be the end of his life, you know, 23 years ago, he prayed that he'd be able to see his children grow up. So when the second bout of cancer came along, you know, he said, you know, what I asked for, I was given.
In one word, can you describe your dad?
No. I guess if I had one word, I would say influential. I think one of my favorites is he took me out hunting. It's the first time I'd been hunting. We were out duck hunting, and we were sitting there, and a wood duck landed. It came out of nowhere. We didn't see it. It came from behind us, but it landed, and you're not supposed to shoot towards the water, but he was like, that's a wood duck. I think we're safe. You can hit it. It's sitting still. And so I shot at it, and then it got up and flew away. And he just like looked at me and was like, it was sitting right there. How'd you miss that? And you know, I was like, I don't know. You know, I was a little bit upset because I was like, oh, how did I miss that? And then we saw it, like something floating across the pond, and he was like, no way, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say that. And then, but he realized the current was taking it like away from us, and we didn't have our dog with us. So he was like, well, if that's that wood duck, I'm going to get it. So he like stepped towards the edge of the pond, and he had his waders on. They go like all the way up, and he took maybe 2 steps, and the water went he like sunk in. It was mud, and it went all the way up, and he was like, I'm not letting that duck go. So he like stripped down to his skivvies and swam for it, and it was it was so cold. I could tell, because afterwards he came back and he was like, good hunt, we're going home. But he ended up having it mounted and gave it to me as like my birthday gift. But I don't know, it was like just a fun time. To me, it's like, that's him. So I like that story. His prayer every day was that he could get to know us, or get to know his child, because he was told that if he survived, he probably wouldn't have more children, and then ended up having my sister and my brother. So I think because of his survival for the first cancer, he wanted to make the most, because his prayer was just to get to know us. And he for sure did, and influenced us so much. So much of our lives are him, or heavily influenced by him. So I think we kind of are walking representations of him, but it's not just us as his blood relatives, because he took on a lot of kids as a teacher and as a leader at our church, and he just had this way with people that I think it's hard for him to have met somebody and not really kind of left some sort of himself with them.
The first time that I ever had contact with him, I got an email from him, and his daughter had just made my JV soccer team, and he was just emailing to say, hey, my name's Scott Hazel. I would like to help you coach. If you need an assistant, or if you know, any extra help, I can do whatever you want. And so I was a little nervous about it, because I didn't know him, and I didn't know his daughter. So I didn't have anything to go off of. And I just said, okay, and kind of thought to myself, oh no, this could be trouble. But I said, okay, and he met at the field for our first day of practice, and he rolled up in his Jeep. He was scrambling to find stuff in the back of it. He was putting his soccer cleats on, and that was my first meeting with him, and it was just easy from the get-go.
My first memory of Scott Hazel was when I was just pretty brand new to Cedar Springs, and I was also helping out the Rockford High School marching band. And it was after a band banquet at the end of the season, he came up to me and said, "Hey, my daughter's in the band too. You're the new band teacher at Cedar Springs." And we kind of hit it off. He told me about how he used to be a drum major and is a drummer and musician himself, and that we were working together. And then it was that we finally got to be in our PLC together with the fine arts department, because he taught a little bit of art and a little bit of history, and he was a person that my first real friend on staff here at Cedar, somebody that I could relate easy with and wanted to be friends with, because he had a lot of experience and knew all the people that I needed to know here.
He was just like the biggest pain in the butt, but he was the best one. Like he was so lovable, and I remember I was always busy with student activities, and I would have like important things that had to get done in certain days, and he was just like totally laid back about everything. I remember I'd always go in his classroom and have to ask him something serious, like, this needs to be done right now, what can I do? And his number one song was Zombies by the Cranberries. And I would go in his room, and he is using his whole desk as a drum set, and he's just going at it and just screaming the lyrics. And I'm like, Hazel, I need this question answered now. And he's just he would look at me, but like not even acknowledge the fact that something like had to get done. He was too busy in his own musical world. So that's kind of something that, I mean, it happened all the time, but that was a good memory.
We get together as a family at my house for New Year's Eve every year. All of my siblings and their spouses and some of their children and their children, we all get together and just spend time together on New Year's Eve. Everybody spends the night at my house. We play cards, we have a few drinks, we just laugh and dance and get crazy, and that was coming up in a few days. And he called and he said, you know, I got bad news. I got cancer again. And lucky me, it's rare, and they're not sure how to treat it.
We got a text message during break that said, "Hey guys, check your email." And it was weird because I get a text like that. I was laying in bed in the morning. It was probably like 8:30 in the morning or something like that, and I got the text and rolled over my phone, clicked my email on, and punched in the gut.
About 8 in the morning, waking up and checking my school email, which I try to distance myself during breaks, but that just kind of reading that he'd received the diagnosis, and it was tough.
He found out around like Thanksgiving, and he didn't really think it was that much of a thing, you know, he's gone through it before, but they told him, you know, you need to get your affairs in order.
Not again. Not again. He was very courageous throughout the whole thing. He spent a lot of time during the 7 months at my house. Never complained. Never asked why me. He handled it with dignity.
It was really difficult. I know for him, I mean, the same reason he didn't tell us right away was because if he had the choice, he would have battled it and not told anybody. He would have wanted to get through it, not have it affect anybody's life but his own. But it got to a point where he couldn't hide that, you know, he was losing weight. He was always tired. So that made it that much harder on him because he didn't want to show that it was hurting him, because he knew if he showed, then it would affect all these other people.
The people that were on that email felt it was important to be able to support him financially, physically, emotionally, support his family. And we got together and just brainstormed about some of the things that we could do to help.
He was always appreciative of anything we did at the school. He was appreciative of every purple day that we had in honor of him. The t-shirts, the wristbands, he was appreciative of it all. But as a student, you still didn't really get to, he still took pride in his job. He still worked extra hard to make sure his students are being taken care of. He was still professional, and that's just who he was.
If he could have, he would have taught all the way to the end, but it got to the point where he couldn't physically stand up for the whole day and lecture for the whole day. So he had to stop teaching and was at home, and he hated it because he was like, TV, it's fun to catch up for a little bit, but he was like, my rump is sore from the couch, and I've seen the same shows 100 times, and I can't watch much more. And so he would try to go for walks, but it was too exhausting for him sometimes, and he deteriorated very quickly. I would be gone for maybe 2 hours, and he would text me, so when are you coming home? I miss you. So that was hard, but it was also, I think he knew for a lot of it that his odds were not good. And he even said this because they could have done some experimental medications with him. And he basically said, I'd rather, if these are my last days, I'd rather be in my right mind. I'd rather you remember me as being a strong person who fought it with dignity. So
I think the amazing thing about that part of his journey was most people would say, geez, here I am, I'm only 55, I haven't got to do this. I want to go to Ireland, I've never gotten to do that. I wish I could go up to Marquette one more time, I wish. I never heard him do any of that. He was more, I need to leave things for my family intact. And so he had this big list, and Sue kept saying, oh my gosh, he keeps adding to this list, he keeps adding to this list. But he took care of all that. Even though he was so sick and so weak toward the end, he wanted, the big project was getting a new roof on the house. And God loved the people who came and did that for him. They came, they worked tirelessly, and it was the next day that he died, after they put the last nail in that roof. And I think he really felt like, I can go, I have everything done that I need to have done.
Lend your ears, lend your hands, lend your movement, anything you can. Come to teach, come to be taught, come in the likeness and the image of God. 'Cause you can be like that, with all that humbleness and all that respect. All of the power invested in me. Beat hard to love my enemies. All of the black bags over the heads of the dead and dying. The more I understand about the human race, the less I comprehend about our purpose and place. And maybe if there was a clearer line, the curiosity would satisfy. Time-based prophecies that kept me from living. In the moment I'm struggling to trust the divinity of all the gods and what the hell they have planned for us. I cry for the creatures who get left behind, but everything will change in the blink of an eye. And if you wish to survive, you will find the guide inside.
working very hard and checking Facebook one day after I was working on a deck for about 12 hours, I saw that he passed. And just, you know, that overwhelming feeling of, oh man, because I did know Scotty with his first bout of cancer. And we were there for them. I was a high school student then, but as a community. And found out about it, I was kind of hit by it. And I just found out, got done working on a deck. So I started packing up tools and stuff and heading home. Stopped at a gas station. And I'm like, man, I just feel like crap. So what's something I can do? And I just kind of was in there, I was getting a Gatorade. Well, I went by the candy section, I got 4 packages of gumballs. Went up to the cashier and said, you know, I'd like to pay for this stuff, but if you can do me a favor, give these packages of gumballs out to the next 4 kids that come into the store. She's like, really? Well, sure. So I did that, and I'm like, man, that felt fantastic. Great feeling. So I went home and came home. I was talking to my boys. They knew I was upset. And actually my son Joey said, Dad, why don't we go out and do that some more? So we went to about 7 different gas stations in the Rockford Cedar Springs area, and we bought candy bars, and we grabbed a Sharpie, and we were gonna write a note. And my son Joey said, Dad, why don't we name this Random Acts of Hazel? Sounds like a good thing, cool. So we did that, I took some pictures, and he goes, Dad, you know everything's on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna tweet it or anything like that because I'm not a tweeter. So I'm like, well, why don't we make a group? And my fantastic technical skills, somehow I made a group, named it Random Acts of Hazel.
I had dropped my wife off at the airport at 11 in the morning for a 12:30 flight, and she kept texting me throughout the day, said, hey, we're running late, let's move back, move back, move back. Finally, about 4:15, I texted her, I said, I'm still around the airport. If you want me to come pick you up, I will. And she called me, she said, hey, they're rebooking us. We've got to go back, get our luggage, get back in line and get rebooked. I said, why don't you just come home? We'll fly out tomorrow. So I said, I'll come pick you up. I'll stand in line with you to give you moral support, as she always calls it, and then to rebook her. So I walked into the airport and she was about 30th in line, and I went up and said hello, and she says, can you please get me a Diet Coke? I said, sure, no problem. So as I walked past about 100 people behind her to the gift shop, I thought, if she's thirsty, there are probably other people that are thirsty too. So I got 2 Diet Cokes and 2 Cokes. I came back and I was in the back of the line, and I just said to people, hey, you want a Coke or a Diet Coke? And they kind of look at me. I'm like, I bought one for my wife, and I know you guys have been here all day. So a couple people were like, sure. And I went to the one guy, and they didn't have anything left. And I started joking with him, and I just said, you know what? I said, what do you want? I'll make another run. And so I went, and I took about 2 steps, and I said, hey, you guys want some snacks? He's like, oh, can we get some M&Ms? I said, sure. So I got 2 more Diet Cokes, 2 Cokes, 4 packs of M&Ms, and just came back and went to him and the people that are around. I'm like, here we go, I got them, and just handed them out right there. The one guy looks at me like, what are you doing? And I said, well, there was a teacher from Cedar Springs, which is just up the road here. He passed away recently, and his thing was, be somebody that makes somebody feel like somebody. And I just said, this is a random act of Hazel. His name was Scott Hazel, and he just wanted to do nice things for people, so this is why I'm doing it. And he just kind of got it. He's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And everybody was just very thankful of what I did.
2 things. I think one, it says, hey, look at all the good you can do in the world, and whether it's the little stuff or not. And then 2 is that even though you're gone, you still have an impact. Because I think there's still a lot of people that are receiving those acts of kindness, or even given those acts of kindness, that he still has a hand on.
I wish he could have seen these random acts. I think he would just be smiling. I think this would further validate what people thought of him, and it's just a great testament to him that people do this, and the cards. And what always makes me feel bad is when I see people say, I didn't know Scott, but I just think, you missed out, man. You could have had, you're unfortunate you didn't get to know him. It's cool that people who didn't meet him get these cards and they get to know about who he is, and I love it when people say, when they do a random act, you know, hey, look at this page on Facebook, and I don't think it. I think it will continue to go. You know, I hope that people do continue it. I'd like to see the school, you know, publicize Scotty. I'd love to see more. I just hope he, you know, in 15 years when there's a whole other group of kindergartners who are graduating from Cedar, I hope they know who Scott is, and I think the school has that responsibility to keep that going. And I think if people continue to know who he is, I think that the random acts and that page will continue to be alive and well.
People do acts of kindness all the time, but it means a lot to me that when people are doing these random acts now, that a lot of times they have him in mind when they do that. That's been really helpful. When I check out the webpage all the time, and when I see all of the things that people are doing, just little random acts, but when they do it, they say, you know, I thought of Hazel that day. I felt great. This is something Hazel would have done. And so it means a lot. It helps us get through it when we see all the things that people are thinking about when they think of him, and that people are remembering him, because he would say, and even in his book, he said, you know, the small random act that happened to him was a friend from high school inviting him to go to a Young Life meeting. It was an invitation. It was come along with us, you know. It was such a small act that led to another thing and another thing and another thing in his life that changed his life 30, 40 years down the road. And so I think no matter how big or how small the random act is, what matters to me is when people are doing it, that they're saying, Hazel would have dug that.
There's no way that I can look at those and not smile, because they remind me of him, but they also show me how much one person can do, but how much that even when that person is gone, their good acts can keep traveling and keep inspiring people. And it's a good feeling. It makes me proud, and it makes me happy for our community, and it makes me happy when I'm sad, and it's just, I know for my family, it's the same. It's a way to remember him the way we truly remember him, and that's as the wonderful person that he is.
I just hope people remember his smile and his laugh and how crazy and screwy and goofy he was. And I'll always remember him coming by my classroom and like bending over and kind of showing his rear end to me and making me laugh while I was teaching. And I just hope people remember how kind he was and how good he was and how much more he had to give.
He really did wear his heart on his sleeve and did anything that he could to help out people or put a smile on their face. And that's what I'll always remember about him, and that's what I'll try to emulate in my life.
Aloha, aloha.